recite it?
Big pause.
Yeah, it's nice that you're chanting. It's nice. It is a pause. It is a pause. Yeah. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha
Shri Vijay Gauranga Daya Nitai Ki Jai. Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srimad Bhakti Ki Jai. Jai Guru Premanandi. All glories to the Assembly devotees. All glories to the Assembly devotees. All glories to the Assembly devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, kirtan is always nice. You have nice kirtans also. You have a nice way of chanting this Lord Nrsimhadev prayers. Sometimes when I'm just spacing out, I hear the Lord Nrsimhadev prayers in my mind, and it's the same melody that you chant. It's a nice melody. You have a nice way of chanting the Nrsimhadev prayers. So today we are reading from the Srimad, we are reading from the Transcendental Diary, Travels with His Divine Grace, by Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, from October 1976 to November 1976, by Hari Sari Das. Just have to stretch so I can speak better. Okay.
Need water?
I'm okay, thank you, sir. They always bring me water and I never drink it. But I'm okay. Today is just fine. Thank you so much for offering. All right. From Hawaii came more managerial headaches. Guru Kripa sent a rather long letter informing His Divine Grace. I have been put into the position of having to accept the resignation of the temple president. After 10 days' investigation, he had discovered many discrepancies which he listed. Since December, the temple has fallen into $20,000 worth of debt, and everything that could possibly be mortgaged or loan taken on had been done the same. Although a small temple, there were 9 different bank accounts, 4 of which were the president Sukadev Das's personal accounts, which he justified because he was a householder and therefore entitled to have personal monies. Guru Kripa pointed out, however, that since he was a full-time devotee with no source of income, the monies were actually temple funds. Guru Kripa also reported that the restaurant, which once made $2,000 per month profit, was now practically closed, operating at a loss of thousands per month. The temple itself was unkept, and the garden like a jungle, garbage everywhere, and all the vehicles out of service and in disrepair. The temple books were not kept up, and so no one knew what had happened with incoming and outgoing monies. Nothing had been done to try to fulfill Srila Prabhupada's previous request to build a new temple on the grounds. In contrast, since his arrival with his collecting team from Japan, Sankirtan collections had gone up from 300 to 1,500 per day. In their first week there, they had collected $10,000, more than the temple had done in 6 weeks. This is Guru Kripa in Hawaii. If you know Guru Kripa, he's pretty hardcore. I met him in Hawaii. He's very nice devotee, actually. I'll keep reading. To cap things off, he said that the devotees were petitioning to have Sukadev Prabhu leave. Seeing the dissatisfaction of the devotees, I humbly requested to him that the management of the devotees and the financial situation, being very poor, be given to a new manager. I suggested that he could continue with his college program, which was his main interest. The result, Guru Kripa wrote, is that Sukadev left in great acrimony, taking with him many articles of the temple, saying that they were his own, purchased with his own monies. We do not know where a man gets his own monies, everything being the property of the Guru. Oh, that's heavy, huh? Guru Kripa's plan was now to remain at the temple. That's such a nice statement. To remain at the temple for several months and manage it personally. Shrutakirti has arrived and will manage the restaurant. Ambarish is coming to take up service, and he feels that many other devotees who have become estranged will now return. He made some pledges. I am trying to arrange for a temple to be built here, a great need. Hawaii is one of the best preaching fields in the world, as well as big for Sankirtan spots. We plan to move the restaurant premises to a larger and better location. We promise your divine grace that by the time you get this letter written, October 15th, 1976, this temple will be out of debt. Before I leave from Hawaii, I'll make sure there is a solid president here. He ended with an apology. I regret having to disturb your divine grace, but I wanted that you be informed firsthand, rather than secondhand, in possible gossip. I am at your mercy and suggestion. Replying, Prabhupada regretted the bad management and approved Shukadev's resignation. Recounting problems with predecessor managers, he continued, the fact is that unless the management is strictly supervised, these things will happen. Be careful so that these things may not happen again in the future. He was particularly concerned about the financial aspects and the encumbrance of the temple property. The president cannot take any loans without authorization. This is a declaration. These things must not be allowed. Whatever he has taken must be returned, and he must pay back the money that he has kept. How can he claim proprietorship? Everything is the property of the Guru. You must inform them wherever he has gone that he must return whatever he has taken. Okay, I will stop there. Are there any questions or comments? Not that I can answer a question, but are there any comments? I'll just make a comment, because this is really nice. It was said here twice. Everything is a property of the Guru. Wow, that's such a heavy statement. Even if you're, even if you manage to find, some kind of material independence, it's still, all that money belongs to Krishna and Guru. It's not your money to do what you want with. Because ultimately in spiritual life, there may be the appearance of independence. You move out, you have a flat, you have a job, and you might think that, yes, I'm the controller again, finally. After 6 months in the temple, or a year, or 4 years, or 25 years, I'm the enjoyer. But you're not. Because in reality, whatever we receive is by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. It has been arranged by Guru and Krishna. We are not independent. People that think they are independent, they are also not independent. They are also depending on the mercy of their karma, which is also Krishna. People who work outside of Krishna consciousness, outside of religious philosophy, non-theistic persons, they are also not independent. Their birth, their knowledge, their intelligence, everything was given to them as a function of their past activities. It's not independent. They are not independent. They are also dependent. The difference is that we acknowledge our dependence. We acknowledge it. And therefore we serve the main proprietor, the Ishvara, the Paramishvara. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, all planets. He's controlling it. He's controller of it. All planets. Sarvaloka. Loka means planet, Sarva means all. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Maha means great. Ishvara means controller. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He's the controller, the great controller of all planets. And we acknowledge that, and therefore we serve him. And therefore everything we have belongs to him. Belongs to his representative. Sakshad Harita, Nasamasta Sastra. Utastata, wait. Sakshat Harita Nasamasta Sastra. Kinto Prabhu, thank you. Kinto Prabhuya Priya Eva Tasya Priya. He's very dear to the Lord. I don't know all the words, but I know some of these, what they mean. Priya means dear, loved. Priya Eva Tasya, very dear. So, it doesn't belong to us, it belongs to Guru, it belongs to Krishna. Even if we become very wealthy, that wealth can be taken away. If it becomes a hindrance in our devotional service, Krishna just takes it away. No problem. Very easily. Just a little movement of his eyebrow. Maybe. Okay, so now, That being said,
One question.
yes, sir.
Guru Kripa
Yes, sir.
Maharaj.
Yes, sir.
Guru Kripa Maharaj. I heard Krishna Balaram temple built by donation brought Guru Kripa Maharaj
Yes, sir.
from Japan.
Yes, sir.
And this was special donation. A suitcase, golden pencil.
Oh, really?
Did you hear this?
No, I did not hear this. I knew that he built. I'm aware that Guru Kripa, the gentleman Guru Kripa Prabhu, because he's no longer a sannyasi, he has built this, which is not to lessen his service to Srila Prabhupada in any way. It's just a function of his external ashram. But yes, I'm aware that the Vrindavan temple was built by his donations.
There is some signs in the world.
Oh yeah?
In Krishna Balaram temple.
He's a great devotee. There's no question. We won't argue that. And yes, that's I've also heard, but I didn't know about the suitcase and the pencil.
Gold pencil.
Golden pencil. I'm not aware of that, but it's
I want to ask him directly.
I only met him one time in Hawaii. At the salad bar. In the restaurant. And he was talking to me about controlling my senses. So I'm still working on that. 23 years later, here we are, trying to control the senses. 24. Okay, anyway. So
he said to you
something about controlling the senses. I don't remember exactly, but it was very relevant. Of course, it's still relevant, and yeah.
He's very strong.
Yeah.
You
okay.
should live 1 year with a spiritual master before you get initiation.
I'm sorry, sir?
In one scripture, it's not you should live for 1 year with a spiritual.
In which scripture is this?
I think it was Manu Samhita.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Hawaii sounds to me like paradise. I don't know Hawaii, but I heard that it's a holiday place. And
Yes, ma'am.
how comes that the devotees let the temple so down, full of garbage, jungle, etc., etc.? It's really strange that in such a nice place they are not inspired to keep it proper and so on.
Okay, thank you for this question. It's a very good question. I'll repeat it because people are listening. Should I wear a microphone? Does it make a big difference? Okay. The question is, why is it that somehow the temple went into disrepair with garbage everywhere, right? And big debts, even in such a beautiful place like Hawaii? How could this happen? So I don't know the details, but I can tell you how I know one way these things happen. All right? And so there was a manager. Okay, we won't say the person's name again, but anyway. And I can understand in principle that when the leadership is distracted by the material energy, then everything is going, everything in a spiritual institution, when the leadership is distracted by the material energy, things go down. That's just what happens. And you can see that in the course of history, there have been numerous spiritual institutions established by the Lord, or devotees of the Lord, and with time, Kala, this wheel, it's a great wheel, and it destroys everything in its path. This Kala Chakra, wheel. This great wheel of time, it destroys everything in its path. So with time, things are going down. If we don't make a constant endeavor to keep our consciousness up. So if we aren't always constantly, even if we are in a position of management, we still have to hear from authority. We still have to hear from authority. We still have to read Srimad Bhagavatam every day. And as a gentleman, Arjuna Vallabha Prabhu was pointing out in yesterday evening's class, we also have to read Bhagavad Gita every day. It's a regular daily function. Prabhupada wanted that. He is the institutional guru. Sanstapaka Acharya. Institutional guru. We have to read Srimad Bhagavatam every day. We have to read Nectar of Devotion every day. We should understand Bhagavad Gita. We should understand Nectar of Devotion. It's a law book. There are rules in there about how to behave in front of the deity, in front of devotees. We have to read these books, and by reading these books regularly, by reading the Bhaktivedanta purports regularly, we are having association of Srila Prabhupada. And it's pushing us along. He's kicking us. He's keeping us in the line, in the proper line, in the proper consciousness. And that is required to have good leadership. The leadership has to read every day. It's not that now I'm a leader, I don't have to read anymore. No. Wrong. If you have this, you have to read even more. Because you have to act in a capacity that will be exemplary. You have to act as an example for others who are expected to follow your leadership. Means you have to read and chant every day. That's the main business. And if you do that, I've seen in my personal life, I've seen the example of my personal life, I use it, that when I don't know the answer to a question, what should I do is the greatest question. This is always the question, right? What should I do now? And of course, I don't know, oftentimes I'm a little bit confused about what I should do next. But whenever I have this experience, because I'm regularly reading Srimad Bhagavatam, the answer appears. It just occurs in my mind. No problem. Krishna says, oh look, my devotee's in a little bit of trouble right now. I'll just give him something to do. Because he's got to wait a little bit longer to get what he wants. To get through this difficult time will take time. So let me just find some distraction or whatever. Or maybe I'll, put him in this direction or that direction, whatever it may be. By regularly reading Srimad Bhagavatam, the answer occurs. It appears in your heart. And so when there's, and I don't know of any temple that has this problem, but when there is an occurrence of chaos in the spiritual institution, when this is there, I cannot think of any other reason for that, and nor do I know of any other reason in Scripture than because of a lack of hearing and chanting. Prabhupada said himself that if you do not keep up this chanting, and I'm sure you're aware of this, if you do not read and chant, hear and chant regularly, you will find that these temples you will regret. You will think, oh, my Guru has left me such a burden. Instead of it being susukam kartamavyayam, instead of it being joyfully performed, devotional service will become a burden. It will be a burden just to maintain the temple. So if there's a problem in spiritual life, it can be traced back to hearing and chanting. Regularly reading the Bhaktivedanta purports of Srimad Bhagavatam. Chanting Hare Krishna, we have prescription of medicine. It means 16 rounds a day. That's the prescription. So we should read Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhaktivedanta purports, this verse, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, regular daily function. Right? Anyway, Nitya means eternal. So reading Srimad Bhagavatam, but serving the Mahabhagavat regularly, always. And chanting 16 rounds a day. And then you can get yourself back into line again. So when there's a prevalence, a rise of tamasic energy with the of chaos, which can happen to any institution, and spiritual institutions also, then we need to go back to the basics. Regularly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhaktivedanta purports. I stress that because Bhaktivedanta Swami says his books are the law books for the next 10,000 years, and we accept that. And His Holiness Bhakti-Bhushan Maharaj has made a point on more than one occasion that although we have access to many different commentaries, Prabhupada has also referenced the other commentaries. In his first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he says that the, what does he use this term? Something that the sincere scholar or a scholar may have access to these. What's the exact phrase? I don't remember, but the point is that these are not the Bhaktivedanta purports. It's not to say that these acharyas in our sampradaya, it's not to say that they're not pure devotees. Kala Pat Petra Desh, right? Time, place, circumstance. The land you were in, the time you were in, the circumstances. In the time, right, the land and the circumstances have been addressed by the Bhaktivedanta purports. So read those Bhaktivedanta purports every day. Enchant the prescribed number of rounds on the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and your Japa Mala every day. And then after that you can make a decision. A plan, if you want to make a plan, please make sure you're hearing and chanting first, nicely. And so my answer to your question, Dara Mataji, thank you for asking this question, is that it must have been because of not hearing and chanting. It must have been.
Maybe they get distracted by the nice place also.
Yes, I used to live in Hawaii. It's very distracting, It's beautiful. It is so beautiful. I joined in Hawaii temple. It's very beautiful. It's, oh, wow. I mean, just wow. Really, wow. You can live in the mountains. There was a man who lived in the mountains. We called him Mountain Man. He would he would come and bring bananas, fresh picked bananas and fruits, and we would buy them from him. Yes, sir.
In some yogic scriptures, there's mention that when you are already very advanced, or when you are actually already in your practice, in your dharma or in your sadhana, that it's fructified, then actually the reading is just a side process because you're already involved in everything which is mentioned in the scripture.
All right. I hope everybody heard that question, but I would just address the question briefly. In the second canto of the Srimad... Oh yes, two questions. Is that a question or... Okay, so listen.
There was a question. So what was your opinion on that? And also, the time and circumstances when to chant the rounds, because many chant during the day.
All right, so these two questions I gave...
important to chant in the morning because you really have the surroundings, the birds are waking up and everything else also. So this is actually also one important part.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly answer these two questions and then I'm going to read again from the Bhagavatam because it's getting late.
Yep.
These are two good points and I'll answer them one after the other. The first one is that some yoga texts say that after you reach a level of advancement, your reading is just a side gig. Well, Prabhupada says in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, I don't know where exactly, but I've written it down because it's very important. He says that reading Srimad Bhagavatam is just like chanting Hare Krishna. And he has said numerous times, I want you to read my books every day. Prabhupada has given, according to time, place, and circumstance, and we read Srila Prabhupada, and he's our guru. He's our Sanstapaka Acharya. So his instruction takes precedence over whatever other Upanishads we're reading or Yoga Sutras we're reading. Because those are for a different time, different place, and different circumstance. Prabhupada was ordered by his spiritual master, who is in the line of disciplic section, coming from Lord Krishna through Lord Brahma, through Narada, through Vyasadeva, Madhvacharya, Brahma Madhava, Gaudiya, Vaishnava Sampradaya. Lord Chaitanya is appearing, God is appearing in the Sampradaya. And he was instructed to spread this Krishna consciousness in the West and write books. And we refer to those instructions when we're trying to understand how we should live our lives. Prabhupada said, read my books every day. The Yoga Sutras were written for a different time, when people lived a lot longer. Second question. First of all, we should read, of course, we should try to chant our rounds in the morning. Secondly, we should not, unfortunately, the devotees are too busy researching the absolute truth to spend their time judging others. So we should try to follow in the footsteps of devotees. We should try to become devotees ourselves, such that we don't concern ourselves with when others are chanting their rounds. But please let me just finish. But it has been stated, the best time to chant the rounds is in the Brahma Muhurta. Early in the morning when everybody's sleeping.
Yeah.
As the day goes on, the mode of passion increases. And that is the answer. So we should try to chant in the morning early. And if people aren't chanting in the morning, we don't have to understand why, because they have their reasons. We shouldn't try to understand why, because we get into the trap of fault finding. It's very easy. We may not be doing it, but the propensity is there. We should be careful, because that will ruin our devotional life. So if there's other questions, I would like to answer them later if that's all right.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1. And we are reading verse number 24. I'm pretty sure it's verse number 24, because I remember these last texts from last time, which was on Friday or Saturday. All right. Atha cha duhitarang prajapater visvakarmana upa yeme barhishmatin nama tasyam uha dvava atmajan atmasamana shila guna karma rupa viryodaran dasa bhavayam babhuva kanyang cha yaviyasim urjasvatin nama Atha, thereafter, cha, also, duhitaram, the daughter, prajapatehe, of one of the prajapatis, entrusted with increasing population. Visvakarmanaha, named Visvakarma. Upayeme, married. Barhishmati, Nama, named. Tasyam, in her. Uha, as it is celebrated. Vava, wonderful. Atmajan, sons. Atma samana, exactly equal to him. Shila, character. Guna, quality. Karma, activities. Rupa, beauty. Virya, prowess. Udaran, whose magnanimity. Dasa, 10. Bhavayam babhuva, he begot. Kanyam, daughter. Cha, also. Yavi, Yasim, the youngest of all. Urjasvatim, Urjasvati. Nama, named. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thereafter, Maharaj Priyavrata married Barhishmati, the daughter of the Prajapati named Visvakarma. In her he begot 10 sons equal to him in beauty, character, magnanimity, and other qualities. He also begot a daughter, the youngest of all, named Urjasvati. Purport. Maharaj Priyavrata not only carried out the order of Lord Brahma by accepting the duties of government, but also married Barhishmati, the daughter of Visvakarma, one of the Prajapatis. Since Maharaj Priyavrata was fully trained in transcendental knowledge, he could have returned home and conducted the business of government as a brahmacharya. Instead, however, when he returned to household life, he accepted a wife also. The principle is that when one becomes a grihastha, he must live perfectly in that order, which means he must live peacefully with a wife and children. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's first wife died, his mother requested him to marry for a second time. He was 20 years old and was going to take sannyas at the age of 24. Yet, by the request of his mother, he married. As long as I am in household life, he told his mother, I must have a wife. For household life does not mean staying in a house. Real household life means living in a house with a wife. A good friend of mine most recently cited this to me. Anyway, 3 words in this verse are very significant. U, ha, vava. These words are used to express wonder. Priyavrata Maharaj had taken a vow of renunciation, but accepting a wife and begetting children have nothing to do with the path of renunciation. These are activities on the path of enjoyment. It was a source of great wonder, therefore, that Priyavrata Maharaj, who had followed the path of renunciation, had now accepted the path of enjoyment. Shri Shri Vijay Gauranga Dayanitai Ki Jai. Sometimes we are criticized because although I am a sannyasi, this is Prabhupada speaking, right? I have taken part in the marriage ceremonies of my disciples. It must be explained, however, that since we have started a Krishna conscious society, and since a human society must also have ideal marriages, to correctly establish an ideal society, we must take part in marrying some of its members, although we have taken to the path of renunciation. This may be astonishing to persons who are not very interested in establishing Daiva Varnashrama, the transcendental system of 4 social orders and 4 spiritual orders. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, however, wanted to re-establish Daiva Varnashrama. In Daiva Varnashrama, there cannot be acknowledgement of social status according to birthright, because in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the determining considerations are guna and karma, one's qualities and work. It is this Daiva Varnashrama that should be established all over the world to continue a perfect society for Krishna consciousness. This may be astonishing to foolish critics, but it is one of the functions of a Krishna conscious society. Om Anjana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unimilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sva Vadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam. All right, there's a few nice things in this purport. Okay. This is very nice. We'll talk about this. Uha Uvava. These words are used to express wonder. So Priyavrata Maharaj was he was a brahmachari. He was firmly fixed in his brahmacharya, in his sadhana, but he accepted a wife and he had children. But that does not mean that he accepted the path of enjoyment. Because in his heart, he was always engaged in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he was the ideal householder. That's ideal. And there are other ideal householders in our Sampradaya. There are other ideal householders in the history of Krishna consciousness. There are other devotional, because a devotee does not take to householder life to enjoy. A devotee takes to householder life to beget Krishna conscious children. And the little bit of enjoyment that is there is, one should be careful not to adopt the consciousness of being the enjoyer. There are two divisions of contaminated consciousness. One is that I am the controller. Second is that I am the enjoyer. So engaging in household affairs, one should be very careful not to assume that they are the, enjoyer. Because they are not the enjoyer. Krishna is the enjoyer. And as soon as you take this bait and start going into that area in your consciousness, then you become a victim of illusion. But as a Krishna conscious householder, we have to always stay engaged in devotional service. And I was reading a couple of verses ago, maybe a week. Mangchaya vyabhicharena bhakti yogane sevate sagunan samatichaitam brahma bhuyaya kapate. Mangchaya vyabhicharena. So by engaging in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, in full devotional service. What does that mean in full devotional service? There are 14 senses. Would you like to say something?
I thought it was a question.
Okay. It is, but I'm just asking to stimulate the conversation here.
So should I answer?
I got it.
Okay.
If you want to make a comment later, that's all right. In full devotional service means that also your mind has to be engaged. That's what it means, actually. We have to always keep our mind engaged. Because the mind really is at the center of the senses. The intelligence is like the watchdog. Looking at the mind. What are you doing? What are you doing? Because the mind is thinking, feeling, and willing. I'm thinking, feeling, and willing. About what? I wanted to enjoy. No. Bad mind. Think and feel and will about Krishna all the time. That should be our engagement in the mind. The mind should always be engaged. That means full Krishna consciousness in chanting Hare Krishna, right? Hearing the pastimes of the Lord, right? And the qualities of the Lord and our service. We should always be engaged like that. That's what it means, full engagement, in full devotional service. The mind also needs to be engaged. We have to engage it with the intelligence. Go back to Krishna, thinking of the Lord. If you have nothing to do, you can chant, remember this Maha Mantra. Don't chant your rounds in your mind. Prabhupada doesn't like that. But you can chant Hare Krishna, the song. You should have it going in your mind. Absorb yourself. In the form of the Lord. He has a form. Right up there. You can remember Him. When you're out on Sankirtan. When you're taking a shower, brushing your teeth. We are devotees. We should always brush our teeth for Krishna. Like when you're making a pie, an apple pie for your mother. You remember her while you're making it. So we should be remembering the Guru, we should be remembering Krishna while we're doing our service. And we should be engaged in service all the time. And if we do that, whether we are a brahmachari or a householder, it doesn't matter. Maha Jiva. Whether you live or die, it doesn't matter. Because in living, you're engaged in service, and in dying, you'll be engaged in service also. Okay.
You have no answer?
I'm sorry, sir?
Did I now extend my answer? I think you already answered it, but I just want to share something.
Okay.
It's, it doesn't, at the end.
All right. So again, we will talk about, this is nice. So thank you for thinking and having a response. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to re-establish Daiva Varnashrama. In Daiva Varnashrama, there cannot be acknowledgement of social status according to birthright. Because Chaturvarnyam Maya Shishtam Guna Karma Vibhaga Saha. There is no mention of Janma in that verse, 413. Guna and Karma. So Prabhupada worked to establish Daiva Varnashrama. And that means that and this is a function, one of the functions of the Krishna Consciousness Society. So the Krishna Consciousness, one of the functions of the Krishna Consciousness Society is to establish Daiva Varnashrama. Daiva Varnashrama is based upon quality and work. For example, an individual may be engaged, right, as a managerial authority, right? We have the gentleman Rishi Kumar Prabhu. And I don't really know if I'm qualified to make an assessment, but he seems to be properly situated. In his service as temple commander, right? And it doesn't have anything to do with his life before he came to Krishna consciousness. I mean, it has to do with his nature. What I mean to say is that even if a person, no matter what a person was engaged in, previous to beginning their devotional service, by the performance of devotional service, they come to understand how they can engage in service to the Lord. They come to understand and learn about what is their nature, what is their guna, what is their karma, what are their work that they enjoy, and what is their nature. What are their characteristic natures? Like, do they like to wake up early? Do they like to read? Do they like to see that things are being done properly? Do they like to buy and sell? Do they like to serve others? We should all like to serve others. We should all like to serve others, actually. And what's really interesting, I would just point out, because this is kind of important here, is that whether a person is considering themselves to be a Brahmin, or a Vaishya, or a Sudra, or a Kshatriya, we can follow the example of Lord Chaitanya and just have the mentality, even though we may be a Brahmin, or a Kshatriya, or a Vaishya, or a Sudra, we should always have the mentality that I am only a servant of the servants, right? So many times we move. Dasa dasa nadas. Gopi patu parakamalayo. A servant of the maid servant. Gopi patu means maid servant. Gopi patu. A maid servant, a gopi's maid servant. Dasa dasa nadas. I'm only a servant of the servants of the maid servants of the gopis, who are servants of the lotus feet of the Lord. So no matter what position we find ourselves in a temple, or in life, you may be a professor, you may be a scholar, you may be a president, or a prime minister, or a judge, or a teacher. But in all of these capacities, these are just designations. These are material designations, right? They're designations. They pertain to the ego, which is one of the 14 senses. But we are not these designations. Our designation is Das, Jairam Das, Arjuna Vallabha Das, Dharamataji Devi Dasi. It's okay, she's also Das. She's, also Das. We are all Dasas here.
She's Prabhu.
Yes. But she's also Das. She's Prabhu, but she's also Das. So this is called humility. To do that, we need to have a little bit of humility. We should remember that we are always servants, even if we are the temple president. We should always keep in mind that we are servants, and in that way we won't become puffed up with our material designations They will present a distraction to us. We won't be distracted by the material energy. Yeah, I'm going to open it up for these material designations are distracting the living entity. Therefore, we have to be very vigilant, very strict, not to become attached to our designation, right? If we're a Brahmin or a Kshatriya, it's very easy, you know. You wear those nice clothes, and people are like, "Oh, here's a this or here's a that." So don't become attached. Then the best way to do that, and people will praise you. Oh, you know so many verses. You're such a big book distributor. You know, you're such a good cook, or whatever it may be. But you have to remember that, as we were saying, reading from this Harisari's Prabhupada's Transcendental Pastimes, everything belongs to Guru. Not only the things you put in your pocket, but the things you wear in your ego, your consciousness, that also belongs to Guru. You've been given a position by the mercy of the spiritual master. It's a gift. Because it means responsibility, you have to maintain responsibility. Be mature in your Krishna consciousness. Be very vigilant not to be sidetracked by the material energy into thinking that you have done something well, intelligent. You are intelligent. No. Mata spiritu jnanam apohanam cha. That knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness comes from Krishna. It's not that you are intelligent. You have been given a gift of intelligence. It doesn't belong to you. You're borrowing from somebody else. And since you're borrowing from that person, you should use it for that person. And we should remember that we are servants of that person. We are all serving Guru, and by that we are serving Krishna. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, sir?
Please say something about the glories of Bhagavad Gita.
Please say something about the glories of the Bhagavad Gita. Today is Gita Jayanti, and I and a gentleman, the gentleman Jai Satchidananda Prabhu, will be reading from the Bhagavad Gita, the whole Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
And I'm so fired up about this. I'll tell you something about the Bhagavad Gita from my personal experience. The more I read Bhagavad Gita, the more I want to chant Hare Krishna. Better rounds. The more I read Bhagavad Gita, the more I want to chant better rounds. I want to focus more on my chanting. And the more I chant better rounds, the more I want to read Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, when you read Bhagavad Gita, when you study this transcendental literature, this conversation of mine, Krishna says, you worship him with your intelligence. Worshipping him with your intelligence. Intelligence is one of the 14 senses. The intelligence is supposed to be the, watchdog of the mind. So the intelligence has to be fortified by reading Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is such a wonderful conversation. It's a song of God. It's like, what is it also in the Gita Mahatmya, right? Glorification of the Bhagavad Gita. It's written that this Krishna is just like a cow, and Arjuna is like a calf. And by reading this Bhagavad Gita, he's drinking the milk of Krishna. So there's a lot of glorification of the Bhagavad Gita more. I'm not a scholar in that sense that I can speak so deeply about the glorification of the Gita, but I can tell you I'll tell you a story I know about the glories of the Bhagavad Gita. I was living in Brooklyn, New York, Radha Govinda Mandir. I was watching the door, and a lot of people would come in and out, and one person came out and I could tell by looking on her face, she was not in the mode of goodness. She was crying. She was distraught. Her mind was like a tornado had walked through her mind and just left a mess of it. She was crying. And I knew exactly how she felt. because I've also been in that situation. So I knew exactly the medicine she needed. So I told her to sit down, and I gave her a Bhagavad Gita, and I said, read this book. And she read Bhagavad Gita for about an hour maybe, 45 minutes. And then she got up, and she was completely changed. I mean, completely changed. You see these pictures, right? Before and after, a person's about to go into some kind of like a seizure. They take a medicine, and they look completely different, completely relaxed. You know? It was a before and after. I mean, completely. She walked in, she was a wreck. I mean, she was really, something was going on heavy in her life. I said, just read this book. She read it for an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, and she was changed. I could tell by the look on her face. She was practically smiling. I said, how do you feel better now? She said, yes. Thank you very much. These are the glories of the Gita. You have to read it. You have to read it. I'm going to start reading the Gita every day. I've been reading Bhagavatam every day, but now I'm going to also start reading Gita every day because that's what Prabhupada wanted. And I love the Bhagavad Gita. This is my first book. Bhagavad Gita was my first book. And the first verse I remember reading was the verse about regulating one's life. It says the yogi does not eat too much or eat too little, does not sleep too much or sleep too little, and does not, eating too much and sleeping too little. Doesn't do those two things. Regulated in their living. So this is the glorification of the Gita. Any other stories I know about the Gita? I know, yes, one time I heard the story from somebody else. Somebody approached Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, and he said he had a question or something. Prabhupada said, have you read Bhagavad Gita? He said, no. He said, go read Bhagavad Gita. And the person came back after reading Bhagavad Gita, and he had no questions. But we have to read it. We have so much. This is a legacy. This is Srila Prabhupada's legacy, his books. We should read them. We should read them. One day that will be all that is left. There will not be any MP3. There will not be YouTube videos of Prabhupada giving lecture. That will be gone. But his books will still be here for the next 10,000 years.
There's not enough.
Oh, even if there's an apocalypse, the books will be saved. And in the recovery, they will find those books, and again, the Krishna consciousness movement will be re-established, reawoken. It won't ever be lost for the next 10,000 years. After that, I don't know. I heard Prabhupada said there will be pockets of piety, but it will be not looking good. You won't want to be alive. Prabhupada says, I was reading this morning, first Canto, chapter 16, that these materialistic people, they create they create a lot of chaos for the saner section of society. They create chaos because they don't have any intelligence about how to live. They're eating animals that have benefit. They get milk and they eat them. Holy cow. My gosh, don't do that. They do it, they don't think. They think it's efficient. This is efficiency. Drilling the earth for oil. Maybe that's not a good idea. Just throwing that out there. Maybe that's not a good idea. Doesn't mean we should stop driving cars, right? If you have to drive a car to get Goga and drop off prasadam, it's okay. Do that. But they will create a society anyway. The books will remain, and we should read them now and later. That's what we get our. If you're having a problem in Krishna consciousness, ask yourself: are you reading Srimad Bhagavatam? Are you reading Bhagavatam every day? Yes, sir.
I read every day. Like he said, if so-called elevate yogi, from some yogi scripture, he don't need to read. He already knows. But this is Mayavadi philosophy.
Well, I don't know if it's Mayavadi philosophy.
Okay. Because Mayavadi, they get some knowledge from Guru, and reject Guru. I don't need Guru. I have already know why I need to hear hearing from here. But Bhagavad Gita for devotees is not just jnana for my body. This is divya jnana. And Bhagavad Gita is words from Krishna directly. By reading, we associate with Krishna. And by reading Prabhupada, we associate with Prabhupada. This is association, this most important thing for Vaishnavas, Sadhu Sangha. They're ready to see and hear about this, like Nitya, like sages in forest Namishrine, like Maharaj Parikshit. Svadu, Padapadu. Again and again, we can do this yagya. Shravanam Kirtanam. This is devotional service. This is not just jnana. This is some useless. What we can give up. We cannot give up the session with Krishna, with devotees, with Prabhupada. Therefore, we must have this by reading. And some managers, they have, of course, a responsibility to arrange something, no time. And they maybe think, I'm already senior devotee, I know everything, and they stop to read, But Prabhupada said, for leaders, they must read minimum 4 hours. Minimum 4 hours, more, like you mentioned, more than normal devotee. Right. Even more.
Thank you very much. Gauradesh Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say devotion. So anyway, I mean, it's difficult to say in English. Unabhängig, ob Glück oder Leid da ist. Also,
happiness or distress.
In all circumstances,
right.
To uninterruptedly just maintain my service attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Independent if there is happiness or distress.
Yes.
And also it's mentioned that one who has taken full shelter of the Lord, he actually, in the Mundaka Upanishad, it mentions he has no responsibility for relatives.
Yeah, this is also cited, this has been quoted, right?
Yeah.
Right. This is
because they are satisfied anyways because you're serving the Lord.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is, the thing is also, if a person is like on the highest platform of devotional service, I mean, do you have a question or do you want to just make a comment?
That was a comment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Gauradesh Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gita Mahaprabhu ki jai. I'm so grateful that Krishna spoke Gita to Arjuna.
Gita Jayanti.
Gita Jayanti ki jai. Gita Jayanti ki jai.
Actually, I have one important question.
Yes, sir.
If Krishna would have spoken Bhagavad Gita to a Brahmana, would you recommend the Brahmana to fight? Or to,
You have to ask Krishna. Ask him. He would have told him to do what he wanted him to do. There's more than just, there's like a whole history here. All these things that happened to Draupadi and the land taken away.
You mentioned you get inspiration from Mohita to chanting holy name. What verse is most inspired for you?
I'm reading mostly, like when I read Srila Prabhupada's purport, I think I want that. I want to see Krishna all the time. I want to become free from envy. I want what he's talking about. When I read his purports, I want that. And so then I'm thinking, yes, because I want it, then I think I've got to chant better rounds. And when I'm chanting better rounds, I'm seeing, all these, sometimes it's nice, sometimes I get more fired up, basically. By chanting, I get more fired up and I think, I want to read more. I want to understand more. I want to remember more. And by reading more, then I'm reading Prabhupada's purports and I want that. to be a devotee. And so I want to chant more. So it's not any verse in particular. Well, this is a nice question. It's really, I'm in love with Prabhupada's purports. Prabhupada's purports are Bhagavad Gita to me.
But what was about chanting? About chanting Mahamantra Hare Krishna. What was?
I don't know if there's any verse, but whenever I read Prabhupada's purports, I want to chant more. And the reason I want to chant better rounds, more attentively, is because by reading his purports, I desire what he's talking about. I think I want that. I want to be a devotee. I want what he's talking about. And I know, then I'm reminded, yes, in order to do that, I have to chant better. Because that's my Sangha with Krishna, the holy name. And then by chanting more, I get more fired up to read more, to have association with his Mahabhagavat. So it's not a verse. It's just by reading the Bhaktivedanta purports. When I think of Bhagavad Gita, there are 700 verses. I think of Prabhupada's purports. I think of Bhaktivedanta purports. I like to hear from Bhaktivedanta Swami. When I'm reading Bhagavad Gita, I emphasize, and for me, Bhagavad Gita reading, it means reading Prabhupada's purports.
Yes. Do you know this word Satatam Kirtayantamam?
Satatam Kirtayantamam. This is the 10th chapter, right? Or is it 9th chapter? 9, yeah.
After Mahatma.
Right. Always chanting my glories, engaging in devotional service. Such to, yeah, I know this is a description, right? Always chanting my glories, engaging in devotional service. Yeah.
Always worship me with devotion. Lord. Satatam
Kirtayantam.
Always kirtan.
Satatam Kirtayantam.
Always kirtan.
Thank you.
This is Bhagavad also kirtan.
Yes, it is. Prabhupada says, reading Bhagavatam, that's like kirtan.
This is worship with love and devotion.
He says there's no difference.
Read Bhagavad, this is worship to Krishna with love and devotion.
Yes.
Not just jnana, you know.
Right.
This is a beginning, Bhagavad Gita, this is beginning.
Please excuse me. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.